I'm down in Peel. With me is Geoffrey Boot, Minister for DEFA, and it's a very, very important time of the year for fishermen coming up, Mr. Boot. This is the scallop season is about to come forth. We all know what happened last year. It was a big sort of invasion of vessels.
Race to fish, really, yes.
And plummeted supplies massively, very, very quickly.
Well, within the first 10 days, they caught over 800 kilos, which was a quarter of the year's catch previously. And it was a race to fish, and we didn't want that to happen this year. So we've looked at measures and ways to deal with that. Last year we didn't have a king scallop board, we had a queen scallop board. So we've now got a combined board. We've been out to industry and processors. The board comprises members from all around the Irish Sea, and they've come up with a total allowable catch, which is around 20% lower than last year for the total. And we've also brought in a daily catch limit from day one.
But how can you do this when you have this system of fishing that open to other territories that can come in here, right? I mean, this is what maybe confused people. Isn't it not? How do you stop them then?
Well, we have a licensing regime.
Your own
and our own licensing regime to fish in our Manx waters for scallops, queenies or king scallops. You have to have the appropriate license. And vessels that are licensed join into the system where we have a vessel monitoring system, which we can see in real time where they're fishing and how they're fishing, whether they're in the territorial sea or outside. And we also have an e-log system, which means that they have to bag and grade all the scallops that they catch, and then report their catch before leaving the territorial sea. And in addition to that, they have to report that on a daily basis. So that enables our enforcement vessel to either go out and intercept people that are fishing incorrectly, or when they land, they can do spot checks on the landing.
Do Manx fishermen get preference?
There's no preference at all. I know a lot of people would like to see Manx waters for Manx fishermen, but under the present agreements, the territorial sea has to be shared with other jurisdictions under a fisheries management agreement. And in a way, there is some sense in that, because fish don't observe territorial borders, so and they spawn in different places. In fact, king scallops spawn in different places, and the spawn drifts into our waters. So we need to work with other jurisdictions on conservation and catch limits.
Okay, so the quota is much lower this year. That's what you're saying.
20% lower.
So is that going to put people off, or they just spend longer here collecting almost the same sort of amount, but over a longer period of time, right?
Well, it will spread out, because the catch limit has gone from 40 bags a day to 30 bags a day. But it's all about sustainability and resilience, and I think a lot of the fishermen understand that you just can't fish everything out. In fact, the stock reports this year are not that good. There's been poor recruitment to the scallop fishery generally, and we've had to close a couple of areas where we know there's a lot of juvenile scallops, and I think there is an understanding that for the industry to be sustainable, we have to impose limits.
So no Russian vessels, those big factory vessels sort of thing?
No Russian vessels, no. We know exactly who's got licenses. Around 60% of the vessels are not Manx vessels.
60%?
Yes, but we have reduced the amount from around 156 to 94 licenses this year, and that's not to exclude other people, but it's just to bring the fishery back to a reasonable level.
So will you obviously monitor it, but would you close things down as soon as if it's reached a sort of quota? Or
once they've reached the total allowable catch, which is TAC we call it, then the fishery will finish for the year. So depending on how quickly they fish, that will determine the amount they catch. And also the bag limit, we will review that as the season goes on. Last year I imposed a bag limit of 1,400 kilos, which was 40 bags of scallops they packed in bags. And when we ran into January, when the weather got worse, none of them were catching that amount anyway, so we lifted the limit as such.
But basically, it's just keeping an eye on things then. That's your end, and you'll have your fishery protection vessel out there?
We will indeed. The Barul is standing by for the start of the season. Enforcement starts with a vessel monitoring system. We can do that in real time in DEFA's office, and the captain of the Barul works in the department watching that. Okay. They look for vessels that are perhaps not fishing in the right place, or seem to be dipping in and out, or not fishing in the right manner. Then they go out and do intercepts, but part of their duties are also looking at monitoring the landings to make sure that the scallops are being caught within the size limit, and also they're not catching more than they should.
And does Ireland government make much money out of the licensing system? I mean, do they pay a lot for that?
The licensing system at the moment Paul, doesn't make any money. It's basically on cost recovery, but we are looking at that because we don't want necessarily make money out of it, although that would be nice in these austere times, but we certainly want to cover the cost of operating an enforcement system, a monitoring system, which is all in favour of fishing for the fisherman's future. Sustainability is what it's all about. So the licensing regime may cost more in the future.
Okay. And while I've got you, talking about licensing, a few people are being done for not having licences for just fishing in rivers at the minute, I noticed.
Yes, we had a couple of people went to court the other day and they were fined, not an awful lot of money, and they got their rods back, but yes, they were. People do that, sometimes they make mistakes, sometimes they do it deliberately. Obviously, there is a licensing regime which preserves our freshwater stocks as well as for commercial fishing, and we want people to work within the rules.